Hello, all. Welcome to the Sales Yogi Podcast. It's Friday evening, and I'm sure all of you are in the weekend mode. Today's episode is a very special one. Special because it is the first interview that we are doing, and that's surely exciting. It is also special because we are accompanied by someone who has spent more than 35 years in sales, and in my opinion, is a brilliant salesman. Finally, the topic we are going to be covering today is also very special. It's a 5-letter word, trust. A 5-letter word that describes every relationship, even sales partnerships. Trust is something that gets built from the first time you speak to a prospect and then carries on for life. To throw more light on this, today we have with us Shirley McKinnon. Shirley is a sales coach, a trainer, and a sales strategist, and also an international author. She also speaks professionally. She founded McKinnon Sales Center in 1998 and is a creator of the Sales Strategist, people connecting sales for this new world. This authentic form of selling connects strongly with the potential client and is focused on creating value, loyal clients, and repeat business. Shirley is also known as a pathfinder. She finds a path to increase revenue without investment in marketing, advertising, or social media, and has guided many clients to increase revenue through some of the most disruptive business environments in history. Shirley is also the creator of the McKinnon Sales Success Profile, a coaching tool which provides and identifies the change one salesperson needs to make, which will have the most impact on their sales. Many of our clients use this process annually to build on the success year after year. Wow, isn't that quite a bio? I told you it's a special episode. Welcome, Shirley, to the Sales Yogi Podcast.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. And this is such an important subject to be talking about trust.
Thank you very much for accepting my invite to come on to the Sales Yogi Podcast. One of the major things that really drew me to ask you for an interview was the part of the series that you had recently put out, right? Starting with trust and moving on to writing persuasive emails and then what to do in 2021. I really connected with all the three videos, but the point of trust really struck out for me because I am a person who believes in building relationship as you move ahead in the sales process, right? And it has become very important that, if you don't have good relationships, which is outside of the fact that, you want to get business from people, it's going to be, you're not going to be a very successful salesperson in the long run, right?
No, you're not. No, you're not.
I know you have you have some excellent pointers, so tell us your story.
Okay, thank you. Well, I've been in sales for a very long time. And when I started in sales, it was back in the day when you were taught how to sell. And it was all about trying to find a problem and then solving a problem and then closing the sale. And the focus was all about closing the sale. And so when I started selling, I did very well to begin with until they tried to train me to sell in their way. and suddenly I went from someone that was naturally connecting to someone that was trying to walk through their process and do it their way. And it wasn't satisfying for me at all. And I didn't like it at all. And so I started to look and work out what the difference was between a good sale and something that didn't happen. And, what I call a shallow sale, you've got someone that's come in and is trying to sell. Now, I'm going to say that a good sale today is leading someone to want to do business with you. So if they want to do business with you, it's because you've connected with them and you've built trust with them. And you can build that trust very quickly if you know the right techniques. And you must focus on the client and how you can help and what problems they want to solve. So always looking for their problems and what they want to solve should be your guide on how to lead them to want to buy from you.
Absolutely. I mean, I get your point totally because I am in total agreement with what you said. Specifically, a lot of companies themselves, are focusing on sales trainings, which is basically very skills based, right? I mean, you're looking at, like you rightly said, you've been taught how to sell. It's a good thing to be aware of your product and your service, of course, right? But with scripts, with a lot of systems and other stuff and all, the major issue that even I find is that there is no room left for your individualism to come out. The person is going to be dealing with you as another person. So, like you said, the connection should be there, but from people to people, not from systems to systems or processes to processes, right?
Yes, and what we bring to the sale, within the sale, there are sales skills you need, but behind that sales skill, you need mindset and you need an attitude. And the attitude must always be focused on the client. The interesting thing that I found when I got into selling and got into sales training is that I started to work with people who were selling very high-priced items. So I was, in the last few years, have trained people to sell products that range from $100,000 up to $20 million.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And the sales process must be based on trust. Because it doesn't matter, if you go to the bottom end of sales, you're competing on price. That's not selling. That's customer service. But in real sales, you want to be able to actually build the trust and build it very fast.
Right. So, do you think how does trust really impact sales relationships? We've seen trust being spoken about a lot when it comes to personal relationships, of course. And, a lot of work that we do around building a relationship at a personal level is built on trust. How do we translate that into building a sales relationship? And what do you think how does it impact your sales?
I would go to say that without trust, there is no relationship. And one of the things that I always teach people is that in order to sell well, sometimes you have to risk the relationship, which feels a little bit frightening. But that means that you're being honest, you're being in your integrity, and you will at times maybe say to a client, I'm sorry, I don't think this is a good fit for you. But it's all based on integrity. So without trust, there is no sale. And there certainly won't be repeat business. So, and there are techniques you can learn to build trust very quickly.
Absolutely. In fact, I was coming to that, as you were speaking, the one question that popped up in my mind was, is there a real step-by-step approach or some hacks or at least some changes that we could do to our own sales approach that will help us build trust with the client or the prospect in that way?
And absolutely. And what you do, first of all, is you come to the sale with the idea of how I can help. So you don't come to the sale with, can I make a sale? No, you come to the sale with, how can I help? Now, how can you help? You need to ask the right kind of questions to understand the client and to understand what their problems are from their point of view. And the way that you do that is through open-ended questions. Now, I always teach people to remember TED. T-E-D. Tell me about, explain, and describe. Tell me about is the king of open-ended questions. And so if I'm going to meet a new business client, my first question will be, so tell me more about your business. And I'm waiting to hear, first of all, the first thing that will come out after an open-ended question is they will think, and what will come out will be the thing that's most important to them. And that's what I want to hear. But because it appears I care and I'm interested and I'm listening, it comes out in a big flow. You get a lot of information. And then the partner of open-ended question is listening skills. And I'm always listening for what I call the gold nugget. Now, the gold nugget is the biggest problem that the client wants to solve. And very often when you ask an open-ended question, you'll hear the client give you a lot of information. When you ask another question, you could say, tell me more about this part of your business. If you hear him start to say something again, or he's repeated it, you want to go back and check and say to him, so that seems to be really important to you. Now, if he becomes very intense and excited, says, yes, that's what we want to solve, there's your problem. And now you know how to sell. Now, by that time, you have built trust, you have built empathy, you have built a relationship, and now he feels like you are a partner with him to solve a problem in his business. So the end of the sale becomes very smooth to just working out the problem together. If you get a lot of objections at the end, you have not done the front part really well.
I think it's a very key point, because a lot of people get stuck at the end, with some of the other reasons, and a lot of objections that come up are either centered around that, this is not the right solution for us,
yes,
or that this is too pricey.
Yes.
These are the two main objections that always come across.
Yeah.
And I think, so I think, when we really look at it, the part of trust starts getting built from the first point of your contact with the prospect. Like you rightly said, right? When we're talking about the TED approach, right? We're telling people to tell me about your business, tell me more about your business. You're actually trying to see whether, how much you can really help the person in what you can sell to them.
Yeah.
And it goes back to the initial point you said, which is basically approaching a sale as something that is more of your dutifulness, rather than looking at it from a task perspective only in terms of selling and getting your number targets. Right. So just take me through a little bit more in detail about the TED approach. We know of the what it stands for. The abbreviation stands for. If you can give an example of how it has helped maybe you or any of your mentees or coaches, who have taken this approach and gotten back into their life, and they've seen better results than what they had earlier.
Wow, goodness, I've got so many examples. Let me tell you. Let me first of all explain a little bit more about open-ended questions, because they build empathy and they allow the person to give you a lot of information. And the more they're giving you information, the more they feel like you're listening, and the more it feels like you're listening, the more it feels to them that you care about them. So I can tell you, let me give you two examples that come to mind. One was just after our training, a young guy got a phone call from one of his clients, and the client was very angry. Something had gone very wrong. And he said that before the training, normally he would go in and just start to try and calm the person down. And very often that makes them even more angry, because it feels like you're not listening. I'm trying to get my story across. So he just said to the client, tell me what happened. And the client came in with a lot of force and very angry, but before he'd even finished his sentence, he started apologizing for being so angry, because he felt like this young guy was listening to him. And so his anger went right down. And by the time the client had finished telling him what had happened, he was completely calm. And the young guy was able to say, okay, let's fix this. So the impact on people of an open-ended question is very, very powerful. It builds amazing relationships. And so that was one scenario where it was a very useful tool for him to have. And the other example I can give you is quite funny. When you say, tell me about, there is an implied command in there that people will just obey. You can go up to a complete stranger and introduce yourself and say, tell me about your day, and they will. It'll just pour out. So I had done the session with these young guys. He was a young engineer. He didn't have great people skills. And I told them to go and practice. And instead of practicing on a client, he practiced when he went home with his wife. And he got home, and usually he said they got home and they say, how was your day? And they'd say, that was good. And how was your day? Yeah, it was good. And then they'd watch TV. That's not how to develop a good relationship. That's how to start the downward spiral. So he went home and he said to his wife, so tell me about your day. And she just looked at him and went, oh my gosh, you know. And he didn't know what was coming next. And what happened was she had scratched the car and she was not going to tell him. But when he said, tell me about your day, there's a command in there, and she felt compelled to tell him she'd scratched the car. So he was amazed at the power of an open question and the impact it has on people. It's very interesting. The first time you try it, watch the body language, because they'll be sitting all uptight, waiting to be sold to. And when you say to them, so tell me more about your business, you'll see, oh, they relax, they sit back,
Right.
they think about what they're going to tell you, and they tell you the things they're most excited about or they're most proud of, or then it leads to the biggest problem they have. So the body language completely changes. When I have a room full of people I'm training, I can just watch and I can see when someone's asked a closed question, because I can tell by the person's body language that they have just been shut down. Because a closed question is a yes or no answer or a short answer. Once a client's answered it, there's nothing to say. So it shuts them down. And I can see in a room full of people the body language when someone has been asked a closed question. So it's a fascinating process.
It is. And it goes quite contrary to the kind of trainings that somebody who is new into the sales goes through.
Yes.
With specifically a lot of scripts and a lot of questions that are given, because everybody understands that in sales, it's very important to ask the right question. So what is the right question, right? I mean, if it is as simple as tell me more about your business, and which is open-ended, and let the person speak, and you don't interrupt when the other person is speaking, that is more important. If the person is ready to do that, it just makes life so much more busier rather than having to sit with a list of questions. And then if you, at the end of the call, if you realize that, oh, I didn't ask this, then you feel bad about the call and how it went. Mm-hmm. And you rightly said, it's specifically, all those questions become more close-ended because it's either a yes or no, or something that is like a one-liner kind of an answer that you get to all these questions. There's nothing more coming out of it.
It becomes an interrogation or an interview. It's not a...
Absolutely.
Now, I'm all for people having a form with the information that they need to get. But if they start with open-ended questions, they will get that information just in the natural conversational flow. And so then they can check their form and then go back and ask some extra questions. But by then, they've created a warm relationship and they've created empathy and they've built trust. So, the interview or the interrogation, let me tell you, the more senior the person is that you're dealing with, the less patience they have for interrogation or an interview. They become very impatient. They won't have time for it. So, the open-ended questions are very important. The more senior people you're dealing with, the more that you need to use the open-ended questions. And you must come from a point of view of wanting to help the client. And this flows through into, once they become your client, you're always looking for how you can help them or recognize them. I'll share something that I did once that, oh my goodness, my client became such a fan. And it was just, I was helping him. You know, I had a client I had been working with, and we had made an agreement we were going to meet on a certain day. And he said, look, I'm really busy that day. I'm the only time that I can see you that day is at midday. And I said, well, why don't we go somewhere for lunch and we can talk over lunch? He said, I don't even have time for that. So I said, okay, let's meet at midday and we'll have our discussion and I can let you get back to work. So I went out and I bought a hamper of food and I took it with me to his office. And he had a table in his office and he was working when I went in. And by the time he finished and looked up, I had unpacked the hamper and put it on his table. And he he couldn't believe. We sat and we had a meeting over lunch, and he just used to tell everybody, you know, that I had bought him lunch because he was so busy. So coming from a point of view of how can I help my client, and keeping, like yesterday I sent out an email to someone, they had won an award, sending a congratulations. You just treat that, it's a relationship. You stay on, and you know, very few managers in a business or business owners get a pat on the back. So my clients were, yeah, they were alone. No one's going to tell them they're doing a good job. So, you know, as their business coach, whenever I hear one of their staff say they feel listened to, or that, you know, the business owner has recognized something they've done, I always send out an email and say, well done, great job. This is great team building. And so this is helping them become better at what they do. So all the time you're looking for ways that you can help and be of service to them.
Absolutely. I mean, and so a lot of concepts that I speak about comes from the Bhagwad Gita. And one of the things that is spoken over there is the fact of Bhakti Yog. So Bhakti Yog is nothing but devotion or devotional service. Now, of course, it's not as, you don't have to be, you know, so superlatively spiritual about it and take it back into your sales role. But, you know, the mindset with which you can approach, like what you did, right? It was a very small gesture because you knew that the prospect and the client was busy and he didn't have the time to even have lunch. So might as well, you know, just have a conversation on food. And that is something brilliant, right? I mean, these are things that a lot of things people don't think about because of whatever is being told to them in terms of the rush and the hustle that they need to do in the sales profession. But like I said, like we started the conversation with saying that it's all about the people who are in sales. And this is one of the things that I keep telling a lot of people that I interact with is that sales is all about the people in it. It might be you, the client, the prospect. You can call them anything. I mean, it's all about the people, right? So, and it's such a tricky thing, and it's become more trickier, like you rightly said. It has become even more difficult to kind of gauge the mood or the body language or a lot of cues that really pick up in an in-person meeting. So, how do we really go about building this kind of trust in a virtual selling environment also, because that has become an ultimate truth for a lot of people right now. And I think sales has kind of gotten into a comfort zone with, virtual selling also. And to give you an example, in India, I mean, from the cultural difference, I don't know how that happens in Australia, but you can shed light on that. But in India, people believe in a lot of interactions where, there is nothing about business that's spoken about. You need to invest that time in meeting that person and building the relationship. And then after some time, maybe, the opportunity opens up. It becomes very difficult to get people on screen so many number of times, as many number of times as, maybe you could get them to meet you in person. One is because of the fatigue that people are already facing because of being online in front of their computers all through the day. Right. So in such a scenario, how do we, as sales guys, what are these steps we could take, some practical examples or some steps that you could give us for building that trust virtually also?
I think that the thing for us to always remember, no matter what country we're in, that we're dealing with busy people. We're dealing with busy people. And so they have to be convinced that you're not going to be wasting their time. And there's a lot of salespeople believe that in Australia, what we call small talk, which is talking about the weather, talking about the football, that is building a relationship. It's not. And when you're a busy businessman, that seems like a waste of time. So
absolutely.
one of the ways in which I encourage people to build a relationship is actually, believe it or not, through email. And most people don't do emails very well at all. And so you can often catch up with someone by email and they'll reply to it, whereas they won't want to put time into getting onto Zoom or chatting with you. However, the reason behind getting to chat to you is the reason whether they will allocate the time or not. And you know, the things that we always, when I go back in my sales career, at one stage we used to just do cold calling, and we got the phone book, and we were allocated one letter in the alphabet, could be M, and the bold listings in there, we had to phone them. And we converted 50% of the people we phoned because we were well trained. But the phrase that always worked with, like when we got to the gatekeeper, which is their secretary or their PA or the person that stops salespeople getting to them, is, you know, we would say, Janine, I don't want to waste his time. When's the best time for me to try and catch up with him? And a secretary, or even if you're talking to the person themselves and say, I don't want to waste your time, when would be a good time for me to talk to you? Very often they will say, look, leave it till the end of the day when I've done all the things I have to do, because they're often still working at 5, 6 and 7 o'clock. And after everyone's gone home, you can then get some really good conversations happening at a time that suits them. But the thing that you have to do is you have to have a reason why you're talking to them, and the reason has to be something that will make giving you that time valuable for them. So, you know, you may actually, and in Australia, no, we do business much, much faster. We can have one phone call and where we can make an appointment where we go in and do the business straight away. So we do it much faster. But I'm sure that there are steps in India where you move that relationship forward every time, but you are always making a reason that's going to be valuable for them. So this is, now the other thing that I want to say is building this relationship doesn't mean that you are being very soft or too nice. Okay. So, you know, you are always working from integrity and honesty. And if someone says I'm too busy, then sometimes the answer to that is that's the very reason I need to actually talk to you.
So true.
And if someone, incidentally, I just want to go back to something you said earlier. If someone says you're too expensive, what that says is you haven't created value in your sales process, and you haven't created value for them. So you haven't connected with them. You haven't found out the information. The fact of the matter is, until you find out the right information, you can't sell. So I always say the first part of the information is inflow. I'm getting information that's coming through. And I imagine that is what's happening in India as you are slowly getting to know them and you are having conversations with them. You are drawing them out and getting more information and learning about their business. The end of the sale is outflow, where you actually talk about what your solution or your service can help them solve that problem. But until you've done a good, thorough inflow, you cannot do the sale and the outflow. Sorry, I got off track there a little bit, but I wanted to go back and cover that.
No worries. Absolutely fine. Because so a lot of conversations that, you know, in my sales process that I build, I tend to take the presentation out of it. Yes, everybody has a presentation, and I'm very sure that, you know, all across the globe, people are still relying on presentations. But one of the biggest reasons that I took the presentations out for a lot of my sales conversations, even if they are initial ones, where, you know, people have asked me to tell me about my product, I still don't take the presentation out, is because of what you said. It has to be initially a lot of inflow, so that the right outflow will come to them, because the assumption is that they're all busy people, and what I need to tell them is what they want to listen to. And I can only say that if I am at the first place, be listening to what they have to tell me. And then again, it goes back to the same points that I covered earlier. How do I listen to what the pain point is by asking the right questions and asking open-ended questions. Right. So you see, I think in my head also, there's a lot of flow and a lot of connection in terms of how everything ties up together.
Yes.
To kind of help you build trust in your sales relationships.
And I think that you want to have a very strong benefit. I said you've got to give them a reason to want to listen to you. So if anyone's me, so what do you do? My answer is always, I work with sales team to help them consistently exceed budget. Now, if you've got a good benefit there, the next thing they should say is, well, how do you do that? And my answer to that is, well, before I tell you that, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Right.
And then I'll go to the open-ended questions. So yes. I'm not going to try and say, and this is what amateurs do. They give their benefit of what they do, or more usually they actually talk about their product. They don't give the end benefit. And then they immediately think, oh, he's listening. So they jump in and start selling. All amateurs sell too soon. Professionals have to get the right information so they know how to sell. So it's the start of it is really important, and that building that trust is so much more important even now than it was. I think it's always been important, but now after what the world has been through, people are much more cautious, and everybody hates being sold to, but everybody loves to buy. So you've got to lead them to want to buy. Yeah.
I love that quote about sales, and you touched upon. So when you were speaking, there's one thought that came into my mind. Yes, from an individual's perspective, or we can make these changes. We can take in these steps and put it into the daily sales routine. But a lot of stress and a lot of the hustle that they need to do comes from the fact that the managers or the businesses actually push their salespeople to keep running behind the numbers and not really being able to focus on, like you said, the difference between an amateur and a professional. Now, if I have to take time for myself as a professional sales guy, and I have to build through the relation, build the trust, and then get to the pain point and being able to sell, with the fact that when I do that, the chances of closing is much higher, right? Do you have any words or any suggestions for sales leaders or business owners so that they can help that sales team also to get into this mode of a service-based or a trust-based selling?
Yes, that's the big conflict for every salesperson, is they're being measured on their figures, and so when they go to a client, the thing that I always say, you must not go in looking for a sale. If you go in looking for a sale, you're in the wrong attitude and the wrong mindset straight away. So what I always recommend is that you go in to see this client and you imagine this client is from Mars and you know nothing about them. You don't know how they think. You don't know what they like. You don't know how they see their problems. So you must go in and not make any assumptions about them and go in to see, now I need to go and find out what their biggest problem is and is it one I can help them solve. And then you need to know your stats. You need to know what your conversion rate should be. Like at the moment, I'm working with a sales team that has a conversion rate of 25%. Now, if they know what their conversion rate is in their team, what the best person does, then they can start looking at the whole sales process to see where their weakness is. So sometimes you will have very logical people like engineers or people with accounting background, very logical people. They are going to be very good at facts, but they're not going to be so good at connecting with people. So their part of the sale is they learn the open-ended questions to connect with people, so they get the information, so then they can give the logic. So once you know what your stats are, you can start looking to see where's the weakness for this person in the whole sales process, what needs to have a little bit of change in order to lift those stats to make it work.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. So, one final question, coming to the end of the time. So, one final question is, what do you want to leave the listeners with? One golden nugget, or in your own words, that they could adopt and they can adapt into their sales, their sales routine, or how they go about selling.
Well, I think just touching on building of the trust. Building trust works with every relationship that you have. So this will be, the techniques that you use, the open-ended questions, they work with clients, they work with strangers, they work with your family, they work with your spouse, they work with your teenager. So all the people that you're struggling to improve relationships, this is a technique that works. So the thing I'm going to say is this. Many people believe that you are just born a good salesperson and you open your mouth and out comes all the right words. And that is not true. It's a myth. The best salespeople have tried out certain wording and then found, actually, if I just change this kind of wording, it works better. So then they practice that wording. And the more they practice, the better they get, the more relaxed they appear, the more natural it appears. So that the one thing I'm going to say is you need to practice the wording you're going to use. You need to practice
Absolutely.
questions that you're going to ask. And then once you have that perfect, you are then totally free to absolutely focus and listen to what the person is saying to you. Because when someone hasn't practiced, their focus is not on listening what the person is saying. Their focus is on the next question they're going to ask. So they don't look silly, or they don't look like they don't know what they're doing. So this practice is the main thing. And assess every sale. When you've been with someone, sit and think through afterwards. What did I do well? What didn't I do well? And what did I miss? And it's amazing afterwards that you can go, you know what? He said that and I carried on talking and didn't recognize it. Well, I can tell you I've had many sales where I've gone back to the office and I've thought, I missed that. I didn't listen. And I have phoned them up and I have said to them, I know we've just been together, but I was thinking of our conversation and I remember you said that and I didn't ask you. Can I ask you now what you meant by that? And I have actually taken where I have not got a sale and I've made that kind of a phone call and I have got the sale because I was honest, I was vulnerable, and I was interested enough to say, you said something and I think it was important and I wasn't listening and I'm sorry, but I need to know what you meant. So practicing self-assessment and look at the wording. Every word you say either builds a sale or destroys a sale. Every word you say either pulls people closer to you or pushes people away. So just in at the end as well, talking about your company, talk about us, our team. This is personal. Don't talk about the company. That's impersonal. It's third person. It pushes your company away. So you're all the time looking at all your wording to bring people closer, to make it personal. So the wording and the practice and the listening, I think those are the key gold nuggets I'd like people to take away.
Awesome. I think these are in actuality golden nuggets, and I'm very sure the listeners have a lot to take away from the conversation. And I believe that if something works with your spouse, it's like it will work everywhere. Right? If open-ended questions work with your spouse, then it's bound to work with everyone in the entire world.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And us is a good person to practice on. And let me tell you, the young man that went home, another young man went home and practiced on his spouse. And he said, "Tell me about your day." And she said, "Why are you asking me that? You've never asked me that before." He said, "Shirley McKinnon gave it to us as homework." And she went, "Oh, okay." And then she told him. So it still worked.
Thank you so much, Shirley, for this wonderful conversation. I am very sure uh, people are taking away the importance of trust in building relationships in the entire sales process and how that goes around, and a lot of valuable insights in terms of asking the right questions, open-ended questions, the TED model, right? Practicing on your wordings, and of course, and going and reflecting back on each and every one of your sales call is actually very important too. So, a lot of takeaways from the conversation. Thank you so much. Gratitude to you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. And I just love what you do. And helping salespeople is so important. These people are so under pressure, and we really want them to learn how to do it really well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I had so much to take in from Shirley. Hope you all did too. We'll be back soon with more interesting sales conversations. So stay tuned. Also announcing the launch of the Sales Yogi book. The book will be out soon. Keep following the Sales Yogi on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. Or you can head on to our website mentioned in the show notes to subscribe and never miss an episode and other important announcements. Until next time, this is Sanjeev signing off from the Sales Yogi Podcast. Namaste.